Okay, why don't we get started with the intros, and we'll get the process going for everybody. Welcome to this Sports Philanthropy Network webinar. My name is Roy Kessel, and I am the founder of the Sports Philanthropy Network. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Sports Philanthropy Network. We have Caleb Bradham, who's our VP of Community Development, with us as well, and our whole Sports Philanthropy Network team. We've got a great team that helps put together these events, and we appreciate you joining us. Today we have Brian Walsh, who is one of our longtime corporate partners with Allegra Printing, and Brian does a lot of marketing work for organizations, businesses, and nonprofits, and he's going to talk about reigniting your donation outreach in today's changed world. Obviously, the last year has been very different for everybody. And so Brian's going to share that with us. I encourage everybody, as you are participating, keep your camera on, send us questions. If you want Brian to stop, Brian's got some fantastic material that he's going to share today. We will have the slides available for everybody, and those will be posted on the page, the webinar page that is created for this episode on the Sports Philanthropy Network site. So you don't necessarily need to copy all of the slides, but we'll make sure that those are available. After today's webinar, you will get an evaluation. We'd love to have you take a couple of minutes to complete that and help us understand what other topics you would like to see and how else you would like to participate with Sports Philanthropy Network. We're really excited about what's been going on in 2021. We've got some great new ways to engage with Sports Philanthropy Network, and we've got task forces. Our first batch of those is going to be launching later this month. We've got Sports Philanthropy message boards, and then our big event, Sports Philanthropy World, is coming up June 28th and June 29th. It will be virtual. We're going to have some incredible speakers and panels, so we would love to have you participate with that as well. You know about all of the other things that we run in terms of our weekly webinars. Next week, we've got Richard Wolf from the University of Michigan, the sports organization Dynamics Institute, which would be a fantastic session as well. We have 3 podcasts a week, 2 that I host, the Sports Philanthropy podcasts that come out Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Kayla Bradham hosts Legacy After the Locker Room every Saturday, where she interviews athletes about the work that they're doing in their communities after they're done with their playing career. Obviously, on social media, we're really easy to find. We've got a fantastic social media team that's been doing a great job on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and getting ready to start some TikTok. Kayla's been helping beef that up. We've got a weekly newsstand, a monthly newsletter, and our event calendar is now getting back into the swing of things because we're back to some live events. So it's not just sitting in front of a computer anymore. We're going to enjoy 2020 and 2021 now and start getting back to seeing people in person. So I don't want to take away more of Brian's time. He's put a lot of effort into making this a great presentation. So Brian, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to your presentation. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll help moderate that as Brian's going through the presentation. Brian Walsh.
Hey there, everybody. Yes, thank you, Roy and Kayla. You guys do some great work at the Sports Philanthropy Network. So first of all, I'm looking really forward to seeing Roy TikToking. That's going to be great. Be able to hold that against him at some point. So the goal of today is, as a nonprofit, I mean, the key to anything driving nonprofits is always donations. I mean, there are grants, there are, however you encapsulate that bucket, it is about getting money in the door to be able to fund your programs. So I kind of did that out of order, thanks to Sports Philanthropy Network. When Roy had asked me to talk about it, I did one of the programs that I know he's got running is the Executive Mastermind. So I went through the first iteration of that, and my background in nonprofits is not necessarily sports related, but so I kind of tried to keep that in mind as I was presenting this, that there are a certain amount of commonalities that each nonprofit has, but I know that sports has its own unique vibe to it. Like I know Kayla does the after the locker room thing, which is very particular because a lot of these athletes have their own stuff that they're doing, and charities that they've founded as a result of their celebrity power and outreach and stuff like that. So a little bit about me. So Allegra Marketing Print and Mail is our official name. We have currently 2 offices. I've got one here in the suburbs of Chicago, Palatine, Illinois, and then a second across the border up in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And we've been in business since 1997. So we've seen a lot of trends come and go and things like that. So we started out, I'm sure some of you may recognize the name InstaPrints. That was how we started out in 1997. And, we evolved over the years to Allegra. It's the same franchise, but just a better name to carry what we do, because it's not just about, printing and 1,000 business cards and 1,000 flyers. It's much more involved than that nowadays. So this is my family. This is what we do it all for. We've all got our whys, and here's mine, my wife Cherish and my twin girls. The nonprofit side of things, that's me right there down in the center. So we run a nonprofit that we founded, we're in our 6th year, that delivers Thanksgiving meals to families in need in 10 communities around our local area here. And this was from 2018. We had 800 people jammed in that gym, delivering, I think, 1,300 meals that year. And then we did 2,000. And then last year, in the height of the pandemic, we did, our goal, we thought in 2000, it was really catchy to do, hey, we're going to do 2020 meals for 2020. That sounded really cool. And then 2020 came along and became what it was. And we had to change everything. And we went through a lot of the stuff that I'm sure all of your nonprofits went through back in, this time last year, a little earlier, March, April. The 2020 questions, would people continue to give? Would the corporations that have always been funding us, religiously every year, are they going to give? If so, at what levels? Are they going to be cutting it down? Volunteers. I don't know if your organizations rely on volunteerism, but when you've got, people who have to show up in masks and distancing and all that, it really impacts the decisions that you're going to make going forward. How is it going to impact the needs of those that we serve? Obviously, like in our case with Basket Brigade, the need was a lot greater. And we were, sitting here in, March and April of last year, like, how do we go forward? At the time, we're thinking nobody's going to donate. And it really kind of surprised us that people continue to step up. It was really a great thing to see, but we knew that the need was greater. So local laws. I mean, this was one, we deal with the school district around here. U46 is the school district, and they've been amazing to work with as far as giving us a facility to work from, as well as providing us families to serve and things like that. And all the way up until like a week before our event, we had our, everything locked in. Yeah, no problem. Illinois is, open, even if we wind up going to, where you got to do it outside. We had bought tents because we figured we were going to do everything outside. We had worked with the local food bank to get the stuff delivered instead of the assembly parts. We made a lot of accommodations, but we didn't know how the local laws were going to impact us, and we still don't. We're all very optimistic about, vaccines and, having a quote unquote normal summer and all that kind of stuff, but we just never know. So, all of these things are rolling through our minds in 2020 and are probably still going right now for most places. And you can see our for the kids, we always do a patch, like for the Scouts, and my girls are in the Indian Princesses, and there's a patch they put on their vest. So this year was a turkey with a mask that said 2020. So we thought that was kind of the most appropriate thing that we could do. So what we did, just like, most of the rest of you guys probably did, was, back in April, we put a video up there with our board saying, we're not sure what it's going to look like, you know, and eventually we did wind up being able to host it all outdoors. A week before our event, the higher ups at the school district said, yeah, no, you can't do that here. And within less than a day, like that night, the school district had found us a new facility. The village of Hanover Park stepped up. So thanks to Hanover Park and Rodney Craig. Rodney's the mayor there, and he hooked us up with the trustees at the metro station, and we had a facility within 6 hours. You know, so, and it was just amazing to see how everybody stepped up to make it happen. So, and that was kind of the cool thing about 2020 was, as much as things changed, as a nonprofit, we're already relying on the goodwill of people, but to see that goodwill manifest itself in even greater ways was just an amazing thing to be a part of. I'm sure all of us probably have stories that can relate to that. So as far as overall, you know, the good news is that most of the companies and just people in general that were surveyed, you know, are still planning on giving. They are doing other things, like the generous tipping is one of the ones listed there. That's not necessarily a charitable giving that you can write off, but, you know, so many of us, when that, you know, Uber Eats guy shows up at the door, we give that guy a good tip, you know, because we understood like what he was potentially sacrificing by putting himself out there and showing up at our door to make sure that we could continue to patronize the local restaurants. It was a very pay it forward kind of things. So, you know, a lot of that, you know, I don't know how all of you finished off the year, things like that, but we were able to not only just meet our goal that we had set in 2020 of the 2020 families, but we actually exceeded it. We did 2,200 families this year. And this year we did up that goal even more. We're aiming for 3,500 families. So how is it going to impact it moving forward? 25% plan to increase because they've seen the increased need in the communities. And 54% are planning on maintaining. So, you know, some of the other ones, you know, whatever that 25 and 54, that other 21% or so, and someone's going to check my math, I'm sure, but that other group of people, you know, they may not be able to, they may have gone out of business. You know, we don't know. I mean, you know, for us, a large portion of our sponsors and donors are corporations. So who is spending? Millennials are definitely stepping up. You know, almost half of them are giving more in response to the pandemic. The Gen X's and baby boomers, they're still going. Most of the donors are staying the course. So this is one to be aware of. You know, 25% are going to shift part or all of their donations to organizations responding to COVID-19. And that doesn't necessarily mean just COVID-19 causes, but also that you have a plan, you know, like you guys have, you know, put on your website, here's how we've responded to the pandemic. You know, here's the extra things that we've done and how we handled it and all that kind of stuff. 80% of the donors are concerned about the ability to actually do it, to actually put it out there. So, you know, you say you're going to deliver 2,000 meals to families, you know, are you going to actually be able to do that? You know, that's, you know, something that's definitely top of mind to people because, you know, we're all living through this for the first time ever. But then they're also, you know, half, it says there, are kind of expanding their views, you know, trying to make sure that other areas are covered, like the arts and the environment, because, you know, like, especially like the arts, you know, my brother runs a nonprofit that does children's theater, and he hasn't been able to have workshops for a year. So, you know, stuff like that is very important that we keep the arts alive. I think it was Winston Churchill when they were talking in World War II about cutting funding for the arts to fund the war effort. And he said, well, then what the hell are we fighting for? You know, so it's got to be there that you have to, you know, have those things when this is all done. Volunteerism, this was, you know, one of the ones that we really struggled with as the Basket Brigade, because we rely on people coming and loading up their car and delivering these meals. Basket Brigade was founded by Tony Robbins, so a lot of it focuses on that, the heart of the giver, and part of the act of Basket Brigade. You know, it's great to come and assemble and do all these things, but to physically walk up to someone's door and hand them that box and see that reaction that you have is amazingly impactful. So, you know, that was a focus for us, is, okay, how is this going to impact our volunteerism. So, we did everything that we possibly could to keep everybody safe. We had the 4 tents set up with different stations. People were, told not to get out of their cars. We were loading them up. And, we were shocked. This was the earliest that we ever finished. We delivered more baskets than we ever did. And it was the earliest that we were done in the day. And we actually had to put an alert out through Eventbrite that we were using to tell people, hey, stop coming. We've got enough cars. Everyone, we're going to try to make sure everybody in line gets some meals to take out, but we don't need anyone else to come. So if you're planning on the late shift, don't head this way. So, volunteerism has been a challenge, and it's, one that we continue to overcome. The vaccines are definitely going to, help us in that regard, and able to get people out to, like Roy said, the events. So these are, all the things that we're facing. So these are the things that, we all need to contend with, whether you are sports-based or not. That's why, like I said, I'm drawing the parallels with our charity, the Basket Brigade, but, all of it impacts all of us in different ways. And it just depends on how you're going to respond to it. So, in summation, basically the, giving is still happening. So one of the things, that third bullet point there, don't give up on those that didn't donate in 2020, because just because they had to pull back in that year doesn't mean that they're pulling back entirely. So, it's tough. Even the business world, you have to look at, budgetary numbers. And I think in like the world of, mortgages and banking and stuff, the banks are just going to ignore the year that 2020 even happened, because the 2020 numbers are just off for everybody. So, I know a lot of people always have they reach out to the previous year's donors and stuff, but, don't forget about the 2019 people, because just because they weren't able to donate in 2020 doesn't mean that they won't be able to in 2021 or beyond. So all of that said, what are we up against? So in getting your message across to, whether it's a donor, a customer, a client, whatever it is, this is what you're up against. The average person is exposed to, almost 2 million messages per year, it says. The average numbers per day are over 5,000. And that's just crazy. Your brain is constantly filtering out all of the things that aren't important to you. The average number of ads that you have some awareness of, this isn't just the ads that you see in a day, are about 86. So this is as you're scrolling through your social feeds and stuff like that, you're seeing the target ad, you're seeing, whatever personalized ads that Facebook and Google are sending to you, you're seeing them, you're just not necessarily paying attention to them, which is, something we'll get into a little more later, because that becomes important. Because even though you're not paying attention to them, doesn't mean that you're not seeing them and your brain's not actually processing them. So the ads that you actually remember in the course of the day are about 12. So of that, 5,086, 12 is about kind of what you remember. So what does it take to actually get somebody to take an action? It takes anywhere from 7 to 22 times of seeing your message to drive them to awareness. So, you have to come at them from a bunch of different directions. You heard Roy talk earlier about all their different social channels. It's not uncommon where in the past it used to just be Facebook, then it was Twitter. Now, there are dozens and dozens and dozens, and you have to just pick the ones that make sense to kind of your organization. But then you also have to realize that depending on what your organization does and who it serves, you may have different strategies for the different age groups that you're targeting. And this is part of a longer presentation that I've done. And this was like one whole segment on just, finding the donor profiles, because, your generation, X and Y's may not even have a mailing address. They may still be living with mom or something like that, where, some of the older people wouldn't be able to be marketed to via mobile apps or things like that. A lot of that has changed, because the fastest growing group on social media is the 65 plus, because they had to get on in order to figure out how to do Zoom meetings, in order to see pictures of their grandkids. All that kind of stuff became more and more important to them as we had to do Zoom birthday parties. So, there are different strategies potentially that you're going to have to use for each of your different targets that you're going for. So who to target? So these are my kids. This is another nonprofit that I work with that we do fishing trips up in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. It's all about getting the kids outdoors. So, these are my girls, they were so happy with these fish. I can tell you the story that, the guy whose boat we're in here, he was like this world-class guide. And, he saw my girls were young, and he determined in his mind, I don't know if anybody's ever fished for muskie, but it's all catch and release. But like they say, a good day of muskie fishing is if you see a fish. Not get one on your hook or anything like that. I mean, just seeing a fish by your boat is like exciting. So, he decided, he's like, oh, your girls are so young, they just want to catch stuff, right? So him being as involved as he was in the community, in the lake and all that up there, he knew there's a thing, I don't know, you may not even know that this exists, but there's a thing called a fish crib. So they put these fish cribs, it's like an artificial environment for the fish. I mean, it's literally like milk crates and stuff tied together that they sink into the lakes to create an area for the fish to make habitat. So it's like if you have a fish tank at home and you put the artificial coral in there, it's a habitat that they're creating in these lakes for the fish to be able to thrive in. So, him being as involved as he was, he knew where all the fish cribs were. So he brought my girls out and put us right over a fish crib. So every time they were, I mean, you can see the size of the lake there. I mean, these lakes are miles across. So every time they cast, they were reeling in a fish, but you can see they're tiny size fishes, but he knew they just wanted to catch fish. They didn't want to spend the whole day to potentially get one on the hook. So, he was having us throw these over and all this stuff. And it just, what amazes me about this whole process is the same people go out on this lake. It's, 50 kids, something like that. So they're all assigned to these guides. And these guides will be like, oh, okay, well, today we're going to fish for perch. How are we going to fish for perch? Oh, we're going to look for trout, whatever. Like, you fish differently. So they use different baits. They go to different areas. They know the hot spots, obviously, but you have to fish where the fish are. So you have to know the bait to use. And the big one is to fish where the fish are. So this is actually, my girls are, I think, a year older in this next picture. And this was from fishing where the fish are. You can see the size difference in that fish versus the last one that we had caught. So, and this one, it was actually funny because, I mean, this was one of the things they do for muskie fishing is they have other fish that they hang off the back of the boat called suckers. And these sucker fish are, while you're doing your regular fishing, and muskie fishing is cast, release, pull, cast, release, pull. There's like a whole strategy to it. Even the way you wiggle your wand matters. So it's about, identifying where the fish are and how to get to them. That's kind of the reason I'm going through the fishing analogy. But these ones, we were literally pulling into the dock for the day, and this muskie hit one of the sucker fishes dangling off the back of the boat. So this wasn't even like, cast and release or any of that other stuff. I mean, this was like knowing how to fish and where to fish. This was, what you can do in the same lake with the same boats and the same equipment, but knowing where the fish are and how to fish for them. So, with that in mind, what makes all the difference in the campaign is knowing where the fish are, your target audience, your list. That is, the single most important element of any campaign is who you're targeting. You can, we had a client once who came to us and, the post office, I'll talk about this in a minute, but the post office has done a great job with every door direct mail, and all they advertised was cheap postage. That was it. That's all people heard, was the postage was as low as like 17 cents, 16 and a half when it first came out. And this lady came in and said, well, I want to do an every door direct mail campaign. I'm opening up a pet grooming studio in the town of Arlington Heights. And I just want to do 5,000 every door direct mail campaign to everybody around a radius of my new pet grooming place. We said, sure, okay. And, we could have just said, ended it there and, done this mailer for her. But we said, well, wouldn't it make more sense to only send to people who have pets? And she, paused for a minute and she was like, you can do that? Well, yeah, absolutely we can. I mean, it's crazy the amount of data that everybody has nowadays that you can pare down to. So like in her case, we had to establish then, what her budget was and said, okay, you had planned on spending this much to mail to 5,000 people. Well, now, we've got to purchase a list and we've got to this, we got to that, the postage increases a bit. So now maybe we mail to, let's call it 1,500 people. But we know that all of those 1,500 people own pets. So we're not literally just carpet bombing it and throwing it out there and, hoping that we get some hits. At least then, we know that these people, and we could actually, instead of 5 miles, I think we went out to like 7 or something like that. So we mailed to less people and a bigger radius, and subsequently a more targeted list in order to get her there. So, that's the part of like using the right bait and all that kind of stuff, but fish where the fish are and use the right bait. So the other, parts of your offer is, or parts of the success of the campaign are the offer, what you are marketing and selling and things like that. And then, just making sure it looks good. So one of the things that is indisputed is, especially in the nonprofit world, your existing donors know and love you. And in surveys, they've said, it's okay for you to email us a bunch and send us stuff. Frequent communication is okay. Let us know on the impact that we could have. The strategic offers being like, if you're having, a sale, like this year we had to redefine how we did an auction for one of our nonprofits. That's an animal rescue. And they had to do the entire auction through their newsletter of 8,000 people. So, they had to transpose everything that's up for auction onto this thing, and people were sending it back. So it was a whole different animal in order for animal, bad pun, not intended. So for our animal rescue, but it was a whole different game plan in order to get to them. But they, they've said, let us know when you have strategic offers and, upselling, hey, we know you've done this, but now if you want to sponsor X number of children, whatever, that's okay. This is what, donors have told us, asking for referrals, hey, who else do you know who might want to help? So, they've already said that. So nothing beats your house list. This is tried and true in the nonprofit world, as well as the business world as well. So, one of the things that we can do is called profiling and cloning your existing donors. So, any of you that have a, existing best donors list, we can take that information and we process it against our list vendor, who returns a report that says, okay, your donors look like this, 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 and this. So, in the real world, this is an example here of, your gut may tell you that, our demographic is people who make $100,000 or more and this and that, but the data doesn't lie. Data can be manipulated, but it doesn't lie. So, when we, in this particular example, it said that the donors were actually in the 40 to 75,000 income bracket. And then we can pare that down even more. I mean, it'll tell us, if they are married with kids, all that kind of stuff. So it builds this profile, and then the marketing campaigns are purchased against this list that's built on that profile. So, that's how we're, back to the previous slide here, we're finding those, red people there and figuring out, okay, where are there more red people that are not in this existing grouping here? And then we're going to target those red people with your subsequent follow-ups and campaigns and things like that. So the other way to kind of, get more donors is to really highly target it. Like I said, with the lady with the pet grooming studio. So, there are lists out there for everything. I mean, if you want to find people who vote a certain party affiliation, who give to the arts, who support religious causes, all that kind of stuff, there's a list out there for you. It may be more expensive to obtain that list. Sometimes, like, we'll even have to go to magazine subscriptions where, there may be people, like when I was trying to help a friend of mine who owned a tattoo parlor, and there wasn't a list for people who have tattoos. So my list vendors say, oh, well, what we can do in that case is, we'll do a profile of people who ride motorcycles and smoke. And my buddy with the tattoo parlor was like, yeah, that's not my demographic. I said, yes, I did. So eventually we wound up getting a list of people who subscribed to Tattoo Life magazine. So it was a much more expensive list, and the list purchase was more. We had to get a minimum of 5,000 records. So, for his smaller shop in Illinois, we weren't marketing to all the people in Wisconsin and Missouri and all that kind of stuff. So he did pay more for the list up front, but, it was a much more highly targeted list that was not people who ride motorcycles and smoke. So how do you reach them? So I think probably everyone here, you've got a website. So you have to make sure that it's mobile responsive, because several years ago, mobile took over desktop for more people browse the web on mobile devices versus desktops and laptops. So, the website is absolutely critical, but the website typically is more of an information gathering tool than a selling tool. It's great for, putting your events up and when things are happening and stuff like that, but not necessarily trying to get more donations and things like that. And that's pretty much the same slide. So Google Grants, I'm assuming most of you probably are aware of this, that they offer $10,000 per month to qualified nonprofits in free Google AdWords. So you have to get really creative as far as how to use those ad grants, because there's certain things that cost per click at $2 and this and that. So if you're going for very highly competitive keywords, it's going to be a little more challenging. So, rather than like in our case, rather than, Thanksgiving donations or stuff, we may have to target, Thanksgiving donations, Streamwood, Illinois, because that's going to be a lot less competitive than, the broader categories. So you have to just get really creative with how you're going to spend it. And it's tough to actually get through all your Google grant spending. Social media is no longer optional. As Roy said, he's on Facebook. I think Google Plus is still on that graphic there, but Twitter and Instagram and all the rest, that you have to be where your demographic are. It's not a matter of where you want to be. You can't just be on LinkedIn if you're dealing with the TikTok generation. There's no point in it. So you have to kind of pick the ones that are most important to your demographic, but you just got to be there. I think most of you probably know, it's not selling, it's sharing. So, you want to make sure you're putting up pictures from your different events that you've hosted, the impact that you're having in the world, all that kind of stuff. As far as donors go, the whole, it's my birthday and I support this charity is huge. It's absolutely huge, because what you're doing is you're expanding your reach as a nonprofit. So if you can get somebody to name you as their nonprofit, it's them sharing with their network of friends. Their network of friends is not necessarily on your radar of people who would normally donate to you. So, if you can get your supporters to name you as their charity of, hey, I'm raising money for XYZ charity, it's huge, because you're greatly expanding your reach. So if, a piece of advice that I would give to you about this is, rather than, trying to say, hey, let us know your friends or this or that, or doing surveys and referrals and all that, create a marketing campaign around getting people to share on their birthdays, perhaps even gathering their birthdays, so that like the month before, you can send them an email to say, hey, we know your birthday is coming up in April. We'd be honored if you could X, Y, and Z, stuff like that. So we had already said earlier that they're okay with frequent communication. So they're not going to get all creepy big brother on you, like, oh, how do they know it was my birthday? However it was. But you want to, just see if you can engage your donor base to be able to share for you and subsequently grow for you. These are kind of, some of the social media networks and all that kind of stuff out there. Nobody's going to be on all of them, so don't feel you need to. Email marketing is still out there, and this is the frequent communication thing. Email marketing is horrible for prospecting, but great for retention. So, getting a monthly newsletter out there of, what you're doing coming up this month, the events you're having, and, the impact you're having, like link to a video of somebody saying how much your charity has impacted them, stuff like that. That's great for email marketing. But, prospecting and trying to get new donors, it's just not what it's designed for. YouTube video is huge. I don't think I need to tell you guys that. I mean, with my girls, they're 13 now, and they don't even watch regular TV. It's all YouTube. I mean, they talk to me about some of these people and they're like, oh, this guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who's that? It's always a YouTuber. So, that's where the new generation is growing up on. And as Roy said, TikTok. I mean, TikTok is huge. And a lot of TikTok is also shared and repurposed on YouTube and stuff like that. So definitely having a strong video campaign, if that fits your model, is phenomenal. 90% of shoppers have said that watching a video has helped them decide on their purchase. So, watching those review videos, you don't realize how powerful those are. I've got a buddy who owns a Disney subscription box service. And every time, this one particular influencer gets one of his packages, opens it and does the opening reveal thing, he gets anywhere from 6 to 12 new subscriptions that month. So I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it has a huge impact. So again, if that makes sense for your business or your nonprofit, great, use it. Sharing your story on digital, this is all the things we've been talking about. So, currently 80% of the entire internet is video right now. So, where do you go? That depends on you guys. So all of that is talking about the digital aspects of marketing and getting more donors or getting more from your existing donors. So, there is still the more traditional side of marketing, the print side and, the traditional side of marketing. So, and it's not a choice, it's a balance. So this next photo, and this is one that was actually mailed to me, really tells you, all you need to know in one picture of why mail is still valid. This is Google. So for Google to be sending out mail promoting Google tells you that, mail is still valuable. So multi-channel is kind of how we refer to it. There are other ways. There's omni-channel and stuff like that. You may hear it referred to in, different terms. But, this is kind of where we focused recently because as we evolved over the years, our area of specialty was direct mail. So how to combine direct mail, we can't bury our heads in the sand and be like, well, the internet, it's just a fad, whatever. Clearly it's not a fad. So, but we have to figure out how to combine all of them. So, this is just what direct mail is. I don't think I can tell you. Lumpy mail is kind of a weird term. That's where you send somebody like a package that, it's lumpy. It feels, it's got a promotional item or something in it. So, but other than that, I mean, the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. EDDM is what I talked about earlier with the every door direct mail. 67% of people feels that it's a more personal connection. People actually enjoy receiving their mail much more than they do checking their email box. When asked to rank the fundraising efforts, the top drivers, this is what our studies have shown: direct mail still being number one, one-on-one solicitation of major donors. So, those guys who are the backbone of your giving, obviously they still need a little special attention, and special events are huge and right now challenging because it's, the era of COVID. So this was what, I get a lot of emails that I don't open, 73%. I enjoy getting postal mail, 6 out of 10 people. Getting emails, 39%. And those are from people that you've already established that relationship with, of new products or designs and things like that. So, get too many emails and enjoying checking their mail, about the same, about 2/3 of people. So one of the things that, it used to be, you would send out mailing and put a little reply card in there and things like that. But now, more than anything, you send out the mailing to build that awareness, but people are still going to go online to respond. So if they're going to sign up for your event or whatever, they're going to do it online. And most often, they're not going to remember your domain name or your URL or any of that stuff. They're going to go to Google and type your name. So that's why it's important to make sure that you're showing up in Google. As you are marketing to existing donors, just remember that you could try to, it's the old, French fry, you want fries with that approach. Always try to upsell them. Hey, last year you donated 1,000, can we count on you for 1,200? Just you can continue to try. And if they say no, okay, fine, give me 1,000. Okay, fine, you haven't lost anything. So as we said before, the most important thing is your list. So as we're talking about how to get people out to your events or do things or get the word out, the events are still out there, but you've had to alter a lot of them. So a lot of these that, had always been your annual golf outing or, run or things like that have just, they've had to change. And for stuff like this, like, a run in the neighborhood, then we talked about earlier, the every door direct mail. So it's a great way to get the word out about something like that. And especially now that more people are home, when we get to the point of having the bigger events and the outdoor activities and stuff, every door direct mail is going to be great because you just target an area and you carpet bomb that area to get people to your event. But now as you get to the ones that are more focused, so if you're just trying to get to, instead of the marketing to everybody in the neighborhood, you only want adults because it's going to be a happy hour where you're serving alcohol, or you're doing a scavenger hunt. So you're only looking for families with kids under 10 or people who are interested in wine and things like that. Then you got to start looking at getting that right list and then marketing to them. So in the past, it had always been the rule of three. You send 3 mailers. Now with the that success, 60% always came from that first mailer, 30 from the second, and 10 from the third. But, long since are those gone, long since that era gone, where it now takes anywhere from 7 to 22. So you're not going to mail 7 to 22 times. Nobody can afford that. Well, except maybe Bed Bath & Beyond with their 20% off coupons. They could seem to afford it. But of anybody that you get any interest from whatsoever, whether it's radio or a TV spot or a direct mail piece or an ad in a catalog or things like that, 90% of those who are at all interested are going to visit your website first. And again, they're not going to, remember your name or whatever. They're just going to Google something that they remember, sports philanthropy, something, that's what they're going to Google. And hopefully you come up and they can get to the right place. But of those 90% of the people who we generate the interest in and get them to your website, 96% of them leave and take no action, or they get distracted by a pop-up or whatever, I just got distracted a second ago because when I started talking about Google, my phone over here heard me and popped up like, okay, what do you want? But so stop listening. That's what I want. So this is the omni channel. So, 84% are now using more than one channel to get their marketing messages across. So what that looks like in practicality is everything should look similar. So this was when we had that slide before about the list being the most important and the 30% being the creative and all that. Everything's got to look consistent. So, you want your postcard that hits their mailbox looking like your ads popping up on their websites. And anybody who's ever shopped for anything recently has experienced this, where you shop for a pair of shoes and then that pair of shoes is following you all over you go. So this is, where that becomes important. So, what we have a program called Direct Connect, and that combines 7 different technologies to get that following. So, as you get to a point where you're like, okay, we've identified the list, we now know who we want to target. Now we want to mail something to them and then continue following them around without having to mail to them 3 or 7 to 22 more times. So everything that we do is in this one comprehensive dashboard, and it starts with social match. So social match is we take that same list that we've just established is your best prospects, and we match it against known social media profiles, and it gets about 40 to 60% of them. So these people, 3 days before and for 11 days after, for 14 days, whether they've been to your website or not, are getting followed around by your ads for your cause. Then this part's not, quite as sexy, but it might be to some, but the mail tracking, letting it know exactly, when things are hitting mailboxes. This is important to some people. And you can also, it's got like, Google Maps integration where you can zoom in at the house level and see everything and all that kind of stuff. Informed delivery is something the post office realized, hey, we need to still be relevant in this digital world. So they introduced a program called Informed Delivery, where you sign up for daily alerts. And what you get every day is an alert of everything coming into your mailbox that day. So, long gone are the days where you can hide the report card from mom or dad because they've already seen on their phone that report card came today. So you get an actual physical scan of everything coming into your mailbox, and we put this, full color ad up at the top with your message on it for a service that people have asked to receive. Call tracking is where you can, this is great for administrators because you guys can listen to how everybody's handling calls. So you want to make sure everyone is answering the phones the same way or telling people the right information, or you get one that we're like, Bob is a rock star and, he handles this great. And you want to be able to play that for the rest of your team. So, that's where call tracking comes in. Plus it can see activity because it's a dedicated number. And then this is the Google ad following you around everywhere you go. One of the coolest things with this is the Google Ad Network is on 2 million websites, I think, and it's not all the big ones, your, CNNs and all that kind of stuff. But some of the other big boys, are on there as well, like, the Targets of the world and stuff like that. So there are times where you'll actually be advertising on your competitor's website because they're part of the Google network. So that's pretty slick. But, as I said earlier, 90% of people who are ever interested in your charity or nonprofit are going to visit your website first before picking up the phone, sending you an email, doing anything. So this is where they're going to start getting followed everywhere they go by Google ads. Facebook and Instagram are a little more subtle in how they do it because it's not me, donate. It's more kind of lifestyle images and pictures of, happy people that you guys have served and stuff like that. Lead Match then ties it in where, we can take everybody who's been to your website and report that back to you and, remarket to those people. So the key to it all is if I gave you a treasure map and said, here you go, that X right there is where the treasure is buried, right? That's it right there. It's in your hands, you can see it. But I don't tell you this starting point, then the map is useless. So there's just no point in having that map without knowing all the steps that came in front of it. So one of the things, Roy had asked us, okay, well, I want you to give me something at the end of this that, my nonprofits can take of value that, would be valuable to them. So this is a thing that we had created called the marketing audit. And what it is, it's a big giant envelope. You can see the size of it here. It's bigger than my head. And we've got all the questions on there of, how you're currently doing things. It's a place for you to gather with your team, everything, about your organization, put it all in this one envelope, and then we'll review it together. So it's got a lot of the questions. There's an actual little insert piece that goes with it. So, that's normally, if we were at an in-person event, I would hand you guys all one of these envelopes, be sitting on your chair. So Roy has all the PDFs of this, so I'm going to have him send that out. But if you want the actual physical envelope and want to gather and go through this exercise, I'm happy to send it to you. Roy can get me all that information. The other thing that I'm sure I always see a lot of, a lot of ears perk up about is that profiling thing where we're cloning your existing clients. So that's a good tool to have. Normally it's, $5.99 to do that analysis. We're giving you guys $150 off that cost. The other part is this flyer here. Again, Roy's got the PDFs of this. These are some examples down the bottom that we put together for what some of these packages could look like. But because we're all so different, and every nonprofit is different and all that stuff, those packages are going to look different. So there was really not a great way for me to say, hey, here's one comprehensive package that's going to fit all the nonprofits. So, what we did was, we're giving $250 off the programming fees of the dashboard that tracks all those different things I told you about. Normally is $500. We're doing it for half that for you guys. So it's not like, one specific, so you don't need to worry about these numbers down here because every program is going to be different as far as, what it's going to look like. And especially if you go through the exercise and fill out that marketing audit form, then, that's going to give us a much better idea of what's going to be the best approach. So that is all. So I have this slide here for Roy. Are you back with us?
Thank you, Brian. Great information there. I know you shared it. I love some of those numbers. I thought it was really instructive to look at how many messages we get bombarded with and trying to cut through that clutter in order to get donations and generate the support that we want for our organizations. But as you said, people are really quick to write off direct mail. And yet every time I go to my mailbox, I've got a dozen new solicitations from realtors trying to sell homes in the area, right? So obviously, as they do the math and they look at all of the numbers, that works because they're, you know, picking up a certain number of deals for every 1,000 flyers and cards and everything that they send out. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the ROI, and that's something that Brian's really familiar with in terms of looking at, okay, we're going to send out these packages and these mailings. You know, the ROI doesn't have to be astronomical, right? You're not looking for, I mean, yeah, you'd love the 100 to 1, but that's not realistic in terms of what you're doing. But you know, you start looking at what the ROI is and you figure out how to scale that up. You know, Brian, I don't know if you've got some examples from nonprofits or things you've done with Basket Brigade in terms of what you've seen. I'm sure it varies, it's all over the map, but maybe just a couple examples.
So of ROI, so I could tell you one for sure, not nonprofit related, but like an HVAC company that we have been mailing for them for years, and they added the direct connect side of things. And you know, afterwards we follow up, and you know, we asked our sales rep, we're like, hey, how did that go? And he said, oh, they got some calls. And we're like, well, what does some mean? You know, because some is an arbitrary number. So some, when we looked at the dashboard, was over 200, and there was only one spot. The phone number only existed for that one campaign. It was the first time it ever got out there. So we were able to directly attribute. And that's one of the things that has always been tough with marketing, is that direct attribution of dollars. So you know exactly how they're coming in, because you're seeing the dashboard shows you exactly when mailings are hitting. The dashboard is showing you exactly the phone calls coming in, all that kind of stuff that makes you be able to say, okay, yes, this campaign helped us do X, Y, and Z. And I know that Google Analytics can, you know, help with a lot of that as well. And our system does integrate with Google Analytics. So yeah, I don't want to take too much more time on that, but I mean, that was one example that wasn't necessarily a nonprofit, but I felt was pertinent.
Yeah, and I think the fundamentals are the same, right? Whether it's profit or nonprofit, you want to be able to scale it up, and you want to make sure that you're getting a return, and things keep changing. And so you have to continue to test the marketplace, and use the support, as Brian said, with the Google AdWords opportunity for nonprofits. It's really a great way for them to get exposure and drive traffic to one of their initiatives or one of their campaigns. So all of the information Brian shared we'll have up on our site. We appreciate everybody taking the time to join us. Brian, thank you so much for sharing all of your information with us today.
Absolutely.
And I want to just put up quickly the slide for next week. We've got Richard Wolf from the University of Michigan in their Ross School of Business. And he launched what's called the Sport and Organization Dynamic Institute. So this should be a really fascinating section. They just finished a 6-week cohort with some of the top leaders around the sports world. And Richard's going to do some real case studies and conversations about the tips on leadership, really what was going on during this emerging crisis. So we hope you'll join us for that today. Again, I want to thank Brian for joining us. I want to thank our whole Sports Philanthropy Network team for being part of putting these programs together. And we hope that you'll join us for Sports Philanthropy World, which is June 28th and 29th. All of the information is on our website. We'll have more information and panels coming soon. So thanks for joining us today. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.
Absolutely.